freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dreams some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many areas of our daily lives, from our politics to our community relations, to our business relations, to our economic welfare, to our social welfare, to our personal relationships, our marriages, our family life, every aspect of our lives. And this is what I write about, and what I blog about, and what I lecture about, and have for the past 35 years, of what I've dealt with and studied with all my clients in counseling. We need to make character matter again. That's why we call this program Character Matters, because it does matter. It always has. It's just that we have paid poor attention to the issue for a long time, and we really need to get back to a frame of mind where we value it again, and where we all cherish those things that help build and sustain character, that help promote character, and that most importantly, reward it, recognize and reward it. We have so many things in our culture today that not only enable poor character development in our young folks and in our already grown folks. We not only have so many things in our culture that enable character dysfunction, but we also have many things in our culture that promote bad character and even reward it. And it's taking its toll on us. And that's a trend that we really desperately need to reverse. And if you agree, and perhaps you have a story you'd like to share, or a question you'd like to ask, or maybe just a general comment that you think the audience would be interested in hearing, give us a call at the call-in number at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm happy to take your call. As I mentioned before, I blog at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. Timely articles on character issues. And I also blog at the popular international blog Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life. at www.counselingresource.com. That's counseling resource with two L's in counseling, counselingresource.com. Timely articles on a variety of topics about character issues, relationship issues, other psychology-related matters on both of those blogs. And then, of course, my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller on how to understand those manipulative, controlling types that you deal with and how to empower yourself in your relations with them. And also my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, Character Disturbance, explaining the vast spectrum of character disorders and how to get along with character disordered people, and especially what to look for when seeking help for dealing with those problems. And then my book, The Judas Syndrome, subtitled Why Even Good People Do Awful Things. It's really an exploration of the bad things that people do, why they do them, and how genuine faith can really transform a person's life, can change a person's heart, can lead to basically a new life. Now, we're not talking about faith just professed on the lips. We're talking about faith in practice, truly embraced and lived out. And so that's my book, The Judas Syndrome. And then finally, my book with Kathy Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? A book written specifically for individuals either in the midst of or who have come to the end of a relationship that has been problematic because of having to deal with a character-impaired person, and you're wondering how in the world you ended up in this predicament and what it is you have to be sure to do to avoid a similar situation in the future. And also maybe a look at how we ended up here as a society where we have so many character-related problems. And another book coming out with Kathy Armistead that I have kind of held up because of some issues that I want to attend to in the text, and tentatively titled The 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. It should be out at the end of the summer. This is the book I've been longing to write for a long time, learning the lessons that my clients have taught me over many, many years about what it takes, what life lessons not only have to be embraced and learned, but mastered in order for a person to develop the kind of character that will enable them to function in a healthy way in society, in their relationships with their families, etc., etc. So I invite you once again to join the conversation at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I do also invite you to pay a trip over to the manipulative-people.com blog site and take advantage of the series going on now, previewing my upcoming book on the 10 Commandments of Character, just wrapping up on the second commandment, and the wrap-up article was just posted this past Friday, and we'll be talking a little bit about it in just a bit. But right now I wanted to talk just a little bit about the tour, the speaking tour I just finished in Springfield, Missouri, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma City. What a really nice tour this turned out to be. I'd never been to Springfield, Missouri before. I've been close by in Branson, Missouri, several times. Branson is a great town. As a matter of fact, the last time that my family and I were in Branson, a F1 tornado just happened to come through the town and did a substantial amount of damage and downed power lines and made travel difficult. It was a very interesting experience. We were staying in a hotel that had a 3-story atrium in the pool area that was all glassed in. So you had a gorgeous view of the beautiful scenic countryside in Branson. It's a beautiful area, a very hilly area in southeastern Missouri. And so, I mean, it was a beautiful day to start with. And just before the storm came through, we were enjoying the beautiful view, my family and I, from the poolside. And then the sirens went off. And within about 10 minutes, things got pretty pitch black. And it is very eerie because even though we were tucked away in an area of this lower level that was considered to be safer, we could still see out much of the glass in this area that also included the pool area. And it was a frightening sight, I have to say, to see. A frightening sight to see the eerie kind of look that it is when a tornado or any kind of high velocity winds or straight line winds come through an area and down power lines and churn up so much dust and debris that there's this eerie glow as electricity flashes all over the place. It was a pretty frightening sight. Fortunately, no one in the structure where we were was damaged, but when we left the structure the next day, we saw a place very nearby that was hit very significantly, and of course there were trees down everywhere. So pretty fortunate, and of course no sign of that at all when I went through the town on this trip, on this speaking tour. But I couldn't help but remember that event as I passed through the town. A beautiful place. And probably the best thing about this tour is, even though it was mostly professionals, there were other individuals there who were not mental health professionals attending. And they seemed to get a lot out of the workshop. We even had some folks attending who I could tell were looking to understand themselves better, understand their own character type, kind of understand more about what makes them tick and what they could do to improve themselves. And it's really just a pleasure to talk to folks about character issues because for a long time, mental health professionals have been of the belief that when it comes to personality and character, and this is something we talked about in my workshops, and it's a point we emphasize all the time, mental health professionals of many persuasions have been under the impression that when it comes to issues of personality and character, they're not subject to change anyway. So professionals have just kind of copped out, saying that you can't do anything about it. You can't really help someone change who they are, basically, in personality or character. And for that reason, they have just basically focused on superficial things when a person comes in for counseling, not really addressing the meat of the matter. You know, maybe focusing on something like communication skills or empathy enhancement, or dealing with depression, or some other kind of issue. But when character is the issue, when it is at the root of presenting problems, when who a person is a large part of the issue, how they've chosen to define themselves, how they've chosen to look at the world and deal with the world. If that is the issue, if that's where all the problems lie, then if you don't address that, then nothing's really going to get better, not substantially. And so I have a feeling that those in the audience who were not mental health professionals, because of the questions they asked, they were looking to understand themselves. It seemed like they had come to that point in life where they were really starting to examine the kind of person they were, and perhaps considering redefining themselves, no longer happy with the way they have typically looked at things and seen things. And that's always a great day. This has really been the great joy of my work over the years. The great joy of my work has been watching people change, watching people dramatically reassess who they want to be, and then do the hard work that it takes to be better individuals. As I was telling my audience at the workshops, personality and character work is very hard to do. As a clinician, it's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do, is to help a person address the kind of person they are and work to change the kind of person they are. This is very hard work. And it can be pretty exhausting at times, but it's been incredibly rewarding because I've had the great privilege of watching people grow. And perhaps there's nothing been as rewarding as that, other than, say, helping nurture the growth of my own family, my own children and grandchildren. Perhaps there's been nothing as rewarding as that. And I made mention of that at the workshop, of how rewarding that's been. And most of the folks in the audience were a little bit skeptical. They couldn't imagine that I would not just that I hadn't burned out in the work, but that I found it really enjoyable. And the reason is because I've witnessed so many people change and grow. And that's been the joy of my life's work. And the second joy really has been writing about these matters and teaching about these matters in these workshops. And next, I'll be back in the New York area, this time in the White Plains and New Haven, Connecticut, and then Albany area in June. You can find out more information about my workshop schedule. I think now the schedule through the end of August, maybe even through September, is posted. Oh, and by the way, I'll be going to the Midwest, the upper Midwest, near the Chicago area, several venues. So check out the cross-country education website, Cross Country Education. Look up live seminars under my name, George Simon, and you'll find a complete listing of the workshops. You can also check out my website at manipulative-people.com. I haven't yet completely updated the website with the new dates that have just been posted, but that will be done very shortly. As a matter of fact, it probably will be done later this evening, and or maybe tomorrow. So check that out. And if you're in the area and you want to come to the workshop, be happy to have you. I always love the questions I get from both professionals and lay people attending. If you're not a professional, beware. These workshops are priced for professional people, so they're a bit more pricey than the workshops that I typically do just for the general public. So keep that in mind, but still would love to have you. And so check out both the manipulative-people.com blog. Go under the tab for seminars and workshops and webinars, and you'll be routed to the listing of my upcoming workshops. And you can also check them out at the Cross Country Education website. That's Cross Country Education, the sponsor of my seminars. Just look under the tab for live seminars and under my name as the speaker, and you'll get the information on my upcoming workshops. So I want to talk a little bit about my latest post on the blog site. I also want to talk a little bit about some things that became apparent to me in the last series of workshops that I did that I haven't talked about before. But if you have something you want to talk about, you have a question you want to ask, you have a story you want to share, something you think would be of interest to the listeners, maybe you just want to talk to me about something of interest to you, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'll be happy to take your call. Well, what I was saying is that some things really struck me in this last series of workshops, and I've wanted to say some things about them for a while, but the point really got driven home in this last series of workshops, because there were a couple of encounters that really struck a chord with me and that I've talked about before. One is the issue of therapy-induced trauma. I know I've spoken about this before, but I'm going to speak about it again. And I don't know how many of you out there listening have experienced this or know of somebody who has, but it's becoming an increasing phenomenon because of the lack of knowledge and expertise out there, even amongst professionals, when it comes to both recognizing and treating disturbances of character. And one of the things that happens in a troubled relationship, where one party in the relationship, we all have our issues. Nobody's perfect. We all have our issues, to be sure. But sometimes in a relationship, one of the parties, character-wise, can actually be a fairly decent character. As a matter of fact, the more conscientious and solid in character a person is, the more vulnerable they are sometimes to a person of devious or nefarious character. It's the truly conscientious among us that manipulative characters prey upon and take advantage of. It's precisely the conscientiousness of a person that makes them able to be manipulated so many times. So what you can have sometimes in a relationship is a pretty decent, honest person with real integrity of character who unwittingly got duped by what I call a covertly aggressive personality, a person who was so covert on the front end, so deceitful, masked their true nature, that it only became apparent who they really were later on in the relationship. I say in my book, In Sheep's Clothing, that it's like getting whiplash. You only know what kind of damage is really done long after the damage is done. And, some folks are just really good at the art of what I call impression management. I don't just call it that. Others call it that too. Other researchers call it that. The art of basically conning, pulling the wool over your eyes. That's why I called the title of my book, In Sheep's Clothing. Some people are really good about masking who they really are. And the folks most likely to get duped are the really conscientious folks among us, the folks who hesitate to make harsh judgments, who can't imagine, really, who are so solid in character themselves that they really can't imagine a person as nefarious, as underhanded, as covert, as sneaky, as conning, and as cunning as their partner turned out to be. And that's how they get duped, and that's how they get played, and that's how they get taken advantage of in a relationship. Well, when a person is beginning to realize what they've really gotten into, and then they go seeking help, and they manage to cajole their relationship partner into coming with them to therapy, and then the therapist doesn't recognize the difference in character between the two parties, or perhaps they're so overly allied with a model of treatment that sees everybody as basically co-equal players in a quote-unquote system, and then misses the reality or misinterprets the reality of a situation. Well, then the victim in the abusive or exploitative relationship ends up feeling victimized all over again. This time, by the very experience that they were hoping would help them and help resolve their problems. This can also happen, especially when the manipulator or the impression manager is so skilled at the craft of making and forming good impressions that they manage to basically snow or manipulate the therapist and curry favor and look good on the outside. And this is the kind of crazy-making behavior that makes the other party in the relationship feel even crazier than they did before they sought help. This crazy-making behavior or gaslighting is the effect of these conning behaviors that allow a person to cast a good impression while really hiding their true self. And when the therapist doesn't get it, this can be a real disaster, and individuals can experience what I call therapy-induced trauma. Well, at several of the workshops that I have done in the last couple of months, many of them, there have been many members of the audience, many of the participants, both professionals and lay people, who had stories to tell, pretty sad stories about this kind of therapy-induced trauma, especially individuals who'd had partners referred to one or more addiction type programs that basically applied an improper model to the problem, wanting to see the person as either a victim of an addiction, maybe is phobic with respect to commitment, and not accurately seeing the person for who they really were, and especially not confronting the core issues that needed to be confronted. This can really be damaging, and it can also cost an awful lot in time and money wasted. Precious time that a person who's already spent many years being used and abused and exploited in so many ways in a relationship, to have that happen even longer. And it also can be very costly, not just in the cost of care, because insurance doesn't cover everything, and many times folks are faced with a significant bill, but sometimes treatment is not covered at all, or only in a very small part by insurance, and then the person has to pay out of pocket. But in desperation, they do, and this can be very draining on resources and traumatize an individual even more. It's tough enough to have to deal in a relationship with a character-impaired person. It's another thing to endure the trauma of either not getting the real kind of help that you need or having the inappropriate help cost an arm and a leg and leave you feeling even more victimized than you were before. So this is something I've been hearing time and time again at workshops. And for that reason, I'm going to consider at least writing something more than just the articles that I've written and another series of articles that I have planned for the blogs, but maybe a short trade paperback work on the subject, maybe titled Therapy-Induced Trauma, how going for help can actually end up making you feel worse or making you feel even crazier than you felt before when you were in a relationship with a crazy-making person with a character disturbance and you tried to get help and you didn't. So I'm thinking about that. Perhaps some of you have had that experience. Maybe you want to share that experience with our audience if you have. If so, give us a call. Maybe you just want to ask a question or share something else. In any case, if you want to join the conversation, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm happy to take your call. The other thing I wanted to talk about before we get to talking about the current series of articles that I'm wrapping up on the blog at manipulative-people.com. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my book, In Sheep's Clothing, and how sometimes it has been misused. You know, covertly aggressive people are very clever. The proverbial wolf in sheep's clothing always wants to have their way, always wants to have the upper hand, the position of advantage in a relationship, and most especially the position of dominance. They want to dominate and control. They want everything their way, and they want everybody else marching in lockstep. However, they do their best to mask that fact. And they're very skilled at making it look like they're doing almost anything else but trying to control or dominate the situation. And one of the sad things that I've had happen, one of the truly sad things I've had happen, and I don't know that there's any way to prevent this, but I've had occasion to realize either someone will come to one of my workshops and tell a story, or they'll write me and share a situation, or I'll actually witness firsthand, perhaps in one of the kinds of consultations that I do. And by the way, I haven't mentioned that in a while, so let me mention that again. I do certain kinds of consultations, specialized consultations, consultations with other professionals for collateral case consultation, or I also do consultations with individuals designed to clarify and expand upon the principles that I advocate in my books and other writings for dealing with character-impaired people and empowering yourself, and also for building character for yourself and using the principles that I advocate to create a better life. So I do these consultations. I do them via Skype for the most part, or FaceTime, if you prefer FaceTime. I can, on occasion, do them through email exchange or chat, or even by telephone when Skype or FaceTime is just not possible. But I prefer Skype or FaceTime, and I've done hundreds of these consultations, and sometimes I have witnessed, just like I have been apprised of in my workshops and through letters and emails sent to me, of folks who basically either misuse my book or misuse the principles outlined in that book, pointing the finger at another party in a relationship as the wolf in sheep's clothing, whereas the real conniver, the real out to dominate and control person, trying to look like anything but, the real nefarious character in the relationship is the person doing the accusing. And they basically use my book to appeal to the conscientious person in the relationship, the more conscientious person, who sees that perhaps they do manipulate from time to time, as just about everybody does. You know, manipulative behavior in minor doses is pretty darn common. We all do it to some extent. The folks I describe in my book, however, are the more archetypal con artists, who some people call almost a psychopath. In other words, these are folks lacking in genuine empathy and out to dominate every situation, to have their way, to always have power over somebody else. And many times these folks will get my book and basically use it as a weapon with the more conscientious party in a relationship. This is just very distressing to me. In the wrong hands, In Sheep's Clothing, as good a book as I think it is, and as many people as it has helped, I get enough emails and the response has been so good over the years that I know it's literally helped hundreds of thousands of people. So, I'm grateful for that. And that is very edifying. But the fact that it's also been misused and can be misused distresses me greatly. I don't know that there's any way out of that. conniving people will misuse anything. They'll use whatever they have to dominate and control. Whatever they think they can get their hands on, whatever tool they think they can use. In my book, In Sheep's Clothing, I outline all these more common tactics of manipulation and control. But the fact is that anything in the hands of a good manipulator can be a weapon of war. These folks are artful. They know how to conceal their true agenda. And basically what they do is they use the conscientiousness of their relationship partner against them. They use the fact that their partner will hesitate, will stop and think, will ponder, will concern themselves with the things that the aggressive party is asking them to concern themselves with. And they'll take matters to heart. And so if the true aggressor in the relationship could convince the conscientious party that they're doing about anything else but just trying to get the better of them, or just trying to control them, or just trying to dominate them, then it's game, set, and match. I wish I could remember it right now. I saved a slip of paper and I haven't yet found it. But some attendee at one of my conferences, one of my workshops, gave me a little quote about helping behavior that I wish that I could remember. I'm forgetting it right now. I'm going to find it, and as soon as I can, I'm going to mention it on the air. It was, and by the way, if you're listening out there, if you were the person who handed it to me, I'm desperate to have that little saying again, because it was just so apropos. But it described how sometimes a person can act like they're only trying to help. That they're only trying to give, they're only trying to serve, when all they're really trying to do is control. And this person gave me a little saying that just encapsulated that so perfectly. And I wish I could remember it. I'm going to have to look through all the material I saved from the workshops and find it. They wrote it down for me on a little piece of paper, and I've since misplaced it. So if you're out there, whoever you are, and you're listening to me, and you remember that you're the one that provided me with this phrase, email it to me, please. Use the contact feature on my blog at manipulative-people.com and call me. I'd appreciate it. I see we have a call coming in. I'm going to go ahead and take this call. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Yes, Dr. Simon, interesting subject that you're talking on right now about giving out your book.
Yes.
In sheep's clothing to an individual. And I was married to a very type of individual that you're talking to, and I had read your book. And at that time, I was just mulling it over as to whether I should give this individual, my ex-husband, a copy of this book. And I also know other individuals that have the same type of character disorders that you're describing. And it's an interesting, how should I say, challenge, whether you want to enlighten the other person, you'd like to see change in somebody. But knowledge is power, and you actually give them a tool to use against you. And I've seen so many times where they turn it around, and next you're the bad guy instead of them looking at themselves.
Oh, I thank you so much for mentioning that. Yes, I've come to appreciate how dangerous the book is in the wrong hands. And, we are also learning that about certain kinds of highly specialized therapy programs. We know, for example, that folks who are really deficient in empathy, folks that are somewhere on the psychopathy spectrum,
Yes.
we know that if we try to teach them empathy, that we only make them better predators. In other words, we only teach them more about what makes most people vulnerable. And they take that information and they kind of store it in the back of their brains, and then they use it to victimize people even more.
That's exactly what I was afraid of. And in retrospect, looking back, I used good judgment in not doing that. But let me ask you, when do you see that there is that door, that opportunity that you may be able to enlighten an individual? I go back and I look and I see all the good qualities and I think, wow, what a waste of human life.
I'm so glad you asked that question. And if you'll hang on here, I don't want you to end the call just yet, because I'm going to speak to that. That was something that we had a robust discussion about in my last workshop tour among clinicians, because, insight-oriented type therapies have always been designed to try and help people come to higher levels of awareness. But with character-disturbed people, I use some rhyming phrases to describe the dilemma. I say that the problem is not that they don't see, but rather that they disagree. And not so much that they're not aware enough, but that they don't care enough. So on many levels, they actually do see just what the issues are. As a matter of fact, there's rarely a behavior or a concern that they haven't heard from somebody hundreds of times over their lifetime. But they don't see at a different level. And when you ask the question, how do you get them to that point? And the real issue is in confronting the behavior and inviting behavior change. And I gave an example about it at the workshop. I gave an example of my grandson who, when he was 4 years old, he had this belief in his head. He believed that if he dove off the side of the pool, we have a pool in the backyard of our home. He believed that if he dove in the water, that he would not come back up. Now, that's actually a commonly held belief of some 4-year-olds. You know, they're naturally kind of afraid of certain things, and they just don't know enough yet to know that there are ways to handle the water and be safe. So he had this belief in his head. He had a lack of awareness about the realities of being in the water. And, you know, I don't know how many folks out there have tried to reason with a 4-year-old, but you can talk until you're blue in the face and try and explain things on an intellectual level, and it goes almost nowhere. But over time, we would challenge certain behaviors, like, you know, just getting into the pool and getting wet, splashing around, allowing dad or grandpa or grandma to pick you up and toss you in the air just a little bit and come down in the shallow end, and then maybe just a little higher, and then coming down again. And then maybe that one time coming down so quickly and with such force that you actually go under for a minute and have to hold your breath and then come back up. And through what we call in behavioral terms successive approximations, a person comes to realize certain things. And eventually, my wonderful grandson came to see in his mind that he really could be under the water and come back up again. And now he dives in with no problem. So how you get people to see who have character disturbances in the right kind of therapy, what we do is we challenge behavior. We don't work with their minds and try to get them to see things. We challenge behavior directly and get them to change what they're doing. For example, when they're doing that scapegoating, when they're doing that minimizing, when they're doing that crazy making or gaslighting behavior. We challenge that in the here and now moment and ask them to try out something different and see how that works. And that's what illuminates them. And the problem that most people have when they finally drag their character disturbed person into therapy is that the clinician is not skilled in these kinds of therapies. So that's why it kind of ends up being a waste of time, and why sometimes the victim in these relationships experiences what I call therapy-induced trauma. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'll tell you something else, Doctor, too. I've seen the character disordered individual where they actually put, say, law enforcement, they put the judge, they put the doctor on the defensive. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you're going to therapy and the doctor's supposed to be in control. All of a sudden, they take control.
Yeah. I'm laughing because you just said a mouthful there. That I have a vignette that I demonstrate with clinicians who are attending my workshops, and it is precisely that. I'm giving feedback to a significantly character distorted person, a true narcissist who is also a bully. And I'm giving feedback to this person, and they're challenging me. And in the old days, before I really was confident in what I was doing, my knees would start to buckle, and I would start to waver. And before long, I was feeling like maybe I just had it all wrong. And this does happen because they're persistent, and they're intense. And sometimes the very intensity that they display when they're doing their challenging will make you doubt.
Oh, it puts fear into them too. They actually come across when they're like that. It's because all of these other disorders that go with them all within the cluster. That I'm not dealing with somebody that's normal here, and they're afraid.
Yeah.
So what do you do with them? But I have found, and I've started to, and it took me a long time, is you've got an adult child here, and the less that you show fear, the more control you actually take. And you have to let them know you're the one in charge and not them. I went to one doctor only, and I'd say this is out of 20, that he said, listen, if I got him in here, he'd last 2 minutes, because I'd sit him in a chair and I'd tell him exactly what's going on, and he'd say F you and be out. And the other doctors that I looked at, I don't want to take on a patient like that, but they don't want to confront the behavior.
Yeah. And I've written several articles about the art of benign confrontation. You must confront. And unlike therapy that was designed for basically decent people with a few problems, character constructive or character challenging behavior is judgmental. You do make judgments. Certain kinds of behavioral styles, certain kinds of character styles are not good. They are not healthy. They're not okay. And certain kinds of interpersonal behaviors, demeaning, degrading, abusive, emotionally abusive behaviors, manipulative behaviors, they are not okay. So a therapist has to have the guts and the self-assuredness and the skills to confront these things directly. And you're right. Although they may have some fear, they can't display it. And they have to be resolute. And you also have to be benign about it, because if you come across as either hostile or demeaning or sarcastic or anything like that, you're not going to be able to engage as effectively. So you're absolutely right. Are you a therapist, by the way?
No, I am just a simple person, doctor.
Well,
Not at all.
You seem to have learned a whole lot. It sounds like you've been through the school of hard knocks.
I have been on your blog, doctor, so your blog is to credit. How's that?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Very welcome, very welcome. It's been a lifesaver for me and anybody that's listening. that has issues or problems, I would highly recommend going there because the archives are just a wealth of information and knowledge, far surpassing anything that's out there.
Can't get a better advertisement than that. Thank you so much. And you know, I'll tell you, this is also the most edifying thing about my work. Back 20 years ago, I had some high-profile appearances. But for 20 years, all of my work, all of the success that I've enjoyed has all been word of mouth. And I couldn't be happier. There's nothing more edifying than getting, all the emails that I get every day, the letters, the goodwill, the comments on the blog. There's nothing more edifying than one person telling another and feeling validated in the work that I've done for 35 years. It has been perhaps one of the biggest blessings outside of my family and the blessings that I enjoy there. It's been the blessing of a lifetime.
You know something, Doctor? I think if the medical field in psychology, psychiatry, life coaching, I think approaches some of that fairly well. I think you'd have students flocking to schools to start, if they could start approaching these individuals and saying, I work in this area, and really, hit the nail on the head to say.
Well, thank you. I do have some chapters in some medical teaching books now at several universities. So slowly but surely, word of mouth spreads even among the professional community. Well, we're coming close to the end of the hour here. I can't thank you enough for this call. What a wonderful and illuminating call and some great questions. I appreciate it so much.
I will just only say blessings. And you just take very good care, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
Blessings. Good night.
Good night. Wow, what a great call. I'm not only blessed about the calls on this program, all of them have been great, but the commentators on my blog, with very rare exception, are a resource in themselves. The caller mentioned the manipulative-people.com blog and all of the resources that are there with the many articles. And there are hundreds of articles. Just pile through the archives there, and you'll find a wealth of information, just like you will in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Character Disturbance, The Judas Syndrome, and How Did We End Up Here, and soon to be the 10 Commandments of Character. But I can tell you that the commentators on my blog are a resource in and of themselves. The stories they share, the support they give one another, the first-hand examples of putting principles into practice that they share, perhaps nothing is as valuable as that. So mosey on over to manipulative-people.com if you haven't already done so, and also check out my workshop schedule there. And if you want to contact me, there's a contact page also on the blog where you can contact me directly. I'd love to hear from you. Sometimes it takes me a while, especially when I'm on tour like I am this year. Sometimes I get pretty behind. Sorry about that, but I always do answer my mail, and I appreciate you very much. So tune in again next week, and I'd love to have you back on another edition of Character Matters. I'll see you again next week at the same time. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Dr. George Simon. Have a good evening and a great week, and I'll see you next week.